Hey, what is up, gearheads? Doing another update video for you on the Stubbs build, my K5 Blazer chassis with the K10 or C10 cab and bed on it for anyone that's new to the channel or to the videos. So I'm just going to give you a little update on the front suspension, how that's going, as well as maybe a how-to or what I'm doing for my rock sliders to protect the rocker panels on the side of the truck, and then what my next steps are from here. It's pretty straightforward for now. I'm pretty excited. I've got the front suspension done. I actually have the links for the steering and the four-link system all getting powder coated. So everything's kind of torn back down, so you won't get to see it in its, quote unquote finished state for now until we get those back. But I'll show you what I've done and we'll go from there. All right, let's get into it. So here on the driver's side is where things were the trickiest, of course, because you've got the most components to deal with and plan around. So, like I said, the links are out. So all the steering and linkage is out, getting powder coated. But I do have the mounts for the steering welded to the frame there. And you can tell I've started the rocker, the side rock slider protection here, and I'll take you through that, and I'm actually curious to get some opinions on that as well. But going back to this, I have found out my location and placement in terms of height for my bump stop there. So you can tell this was the bump stop that I used to set the height. So basically I drained out all of the nitrogen from it so I could collapse it fully and then take measurements off that, and then make sure that as I cycled the suspension, that it landed in the middle of my pad here. Basically, I'm using the top of the four-link mount as my bump stop pad. The other tricky little thing was mounting or figuring out where to place the panhard bar to make sure that it cleared the panhard bar, or sorry, the mount for the panhard bar, to make sure the bar itself cleared the engine cross member and the steering. I do go into this, and you can actually see it in other videos. This is just like a brief overview here. And the other thing is I built some mounts for the limit straps that I have. So on the bottom, it's going to tie into the bolt on the inside here. So there's a bolt that goes through for the four-link, and the limit strap is going to come off the upper bolt for that four-link mount and go up, and then it's going to tie in here. So I did a double shear mount for that limit strap. So basically it's going to be spaced off the frame about a ½ inch, and then there's going to be a 9/16 bolt that goes through the frame there. Looks similar on both sides. I'll show you the other side as well, but it does clear based off the angle of the limit strap and where the suspension travels. It does clear everything. So it's a tight fit to get everything to fit in here. But yeah, the limit strap's not rubbing on anything when it's in there. The other thing I'll show you from the top, you can see the mount. So the hoop and the mount for the coilover on there. So basically I did two landing plates, one that comes off here by the steering box and another here in the back. That's a 1/4 inch steel bent up to create a landing spot for that. And then up at the top, I do have my welding blanket in place because I was getting these all welded, and I'm going to use that for protection from paint to get these finished. But I have the mounts for the coilovers all welded up, and then there is a removable bar here where it's got an Allen on top and an Allen on bottom. Basically remove both of those on each side, and you can just take the crossbar out there to, in case you ever need to do work, remove the intake or remove the engine or anything like that. It doesn't inhibit any of that. I haven't done it yet, but today I'm going to do some gusseting in here for these tubes. There's only going to be the one cross member, but I'm going to throw a gusset in here as well, just to make it look more finished and to add some rigidity. And then there's also, I forgot to mention while I was down here, I believe I'm going to play around with the idea and see how it actually works. But on each side, basically do a gusset tube that comes off of around right here and then drops down to the frame as well, just to add some further rigidity. There's not really space in the front, and with the angle, there's not as much angle down to the frame, so I don't think it's going to be as important in the front, but I just want one more tube to come down to land to create some extra rigidity for these hoops. Over on the passenger side, you can tell basically same thing. So we got a hoop mounted at the same angles and to match the driver's side and everything, as this one was a little bit easier to place. I basically did the hard side first on the driver's side before doing this one, because there's a lot more space over here to work with, and it wasn't as imperative in terms of where things should land. So same design and same way to tie it into the frame. So basically this mount, I had even contoured it to the indentation of this frame right here. I haven't cleaned it up yet, so it's still kind of dirty in there from the weld. But yeah, there's a really strong pocket right there. And also I had already gusseted the frame on the outside with 1/8 inch plate. So that's all tied in. I have it tied in over there as well and have a landing plate for that. And then just like the other side, I'm going to drop a tube down. I'm going to do the driver's side first because there's less space over there, and then basically match the dimensions on this side, but drop a tube down from approximately here down to the frame just to add some further triangulation. As you can see, we've got the bump stop and the limit strap mount just like the other side. That'll come down to the same link mount there. And then of course, the mounts for the 4-link setup. This side does not have, you can see unfortunate rust right there too, that needs to be dealt with. But this side does not have the rock slider protection on it yet. So this is the side I'll do the walkthrough for. So for these rock sliders, a couple things. One, I do of course want to test it with the tire on to make sure it doesn't have any contact, but I did intentionally space this away from the wheel well, so there shouldn't be any contact there with the tire. We should be perfectly safe. Like I said, I'll walk you through it when I do the passenger one as well, but I did cap these, and basically on this front one, it's already landing on the gusset plate, but on the others, I did little landing plates for each one out of 3/16 steel to tie it into the frame. And I've been playing around with different designs on this that I want to potentially do. So I really like the way this one looks, especially just from the outside and everything. I think it matches the aesthetic of the truck well, and it's really simple. So basically what I would do is just gusset it in further, add some more gusseting on the frame side and everything. But yeah, it gives some good clearance, and I think it just kind of looks good and matches the aesthetic of the truck. But update on the rock sliders on the side. So I did end up trimming the connection tube. Let's see if it adjusts. The connector tubes, they're pretty long because these old chassis are fairly narrow. So I trimmed them down to bring the original tube I had inward more, and then I bent up these bars, so I was able to take measurements and figure out, get them to land basically right at the end, so it gives me enough space to weld on there, if you could see, but will give a pretty nice, smooth feel to them. Made a couple little short tubes in there to connect to the chassis, if you can see, connect to the chassis. Some people like to run these a little flatter. I kind of like this high and tight look, and I am going to test the strength of everything too. So basically I'm going to get, we'll see. So the original game plan, I was going to take everything off off the frame so I can final weld all these tubes, but I may test this before I do that, because I'm just showing you this one because it's the easiest. But I'm going to make some gussets that go up here and tie into the frame on these tubes to help prevent a little flex. And then I'm also going to gusset in a couple of, these are all right angles. So I'm basically going to gusset in at least 2 of those to prevent any back and forth flex on there, to add some rigidity. And then the plan was to basically get a floor jack over here and jack up the entire side of the truck, like basically get the whole weight of the truck on the rock sliders to see how much they flex, and to make sure that when the entire weight of the truck is on them, they don't deflect into the body. Because I'm basically taking a guess at deflection right now. So I've got roughly, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell in here. Let's see if I can show you under here. That much room for deflection, essentially, baked in. So I don't think you're going to deflect, I don't know, about 5/8 of an inch or so. But we'll see. And then I didn't really point this out earlier, but one thing that is really helping me is I basically fabbed up this, you know, I use my transmission jack, which I use for the actual transmission, and then basically lightly welded on this little fixture that I made for the front axle to help me get everything in place and test articulation and various things. It didn't work super well for that because there's enough flex built into this Harbor Freight transmission jack that I needed to keep the axle level for some things, and there was just flex built into it. But it is working really well for this, for basically putting, you know, getting that tube on there and then lifting it into place. So it's acting like a third hand for me, because I'm doing everything solo in the shop, and this is a full solo build. So it's nice that I can adjust the height in here and get everything lined up in order to tack stuff in place. But yeah, that's where I'm at right now. I've already fabbed up a majority of the pieces for the passenger side as well. So I'm just going to get everything figured out and tested on this side first, before transferring everything to that side. But yeah, right now it's gusset time and testing weight and deflection to make sure we're all good before I final weld it to the frame. Here's the passenger side rock slider. I basically just matched it to the driver's side and got it all welded up at the same angle and everything. Let's see, underneath the truck there. Don't have it final welded to the frame yet, as I ran out of, or essentially ran out of MIG wire for my 220 welder, so I'm waiting for more to arrive. And in the meantime, gonna get these little gussets I made up and basically put them on the tube. So one side is coped, so basically just gusset these to the frame rail, get those all tacked up on all 4 of them, and then gonna move on to running the down tube that I mentioned coming off that. If anyone, I think that was in this video, maybe it was a previous one, but yeah, gonna run a down tube off of this guy just to add some more triangulation, and we'll go from there. One other thing worth mentioning, which is going to be once I finish the fabrication, I just have a couple small things left of the fabrication, and then on to more parts. So I'm accumulating parts. I've got 2 different sets of harnesses, going to figure out which ones I want to run the truck. I've got retro sound kit, so Bluetooth sound system that fits in the OEM hole. I've got Trick Manufacturing door strikers and the whole thing that holds the door and the latches and everything. I've got these SSV Works 12 switch panels, which basically the vast majority of the truck is going to run off of that. We've got brand new instrument cluster from Dakota Digital, which should be perfect for the LS swap, and everything's going to be run off that. And now what just showed up, I've got a vintage air system to replace. I'll just go through the super messy shop here. So to make my life easier, I removed the stock heater and everything from the, you know, where it goes in the hole, and that gave me room to run this tube without everything becoming more of a pain in the butt. So basically the vintage air system just has a flat plate on here, and then the whole blower assembly and everything's in the cab. So it's actually good I removed this. There's some rust I want to get covered and dealt with in here. Nothing too crazy, just a little surface rust basically. But everything was completely clogged with nests. So rodents had been in this truck for sure, just completely packed with crap in there, basically wrappers and pine needles and all leaves, all sorts of stuff was crammed in there. So I don't know. I highly doubt it. If anyone wants the stock system, the radiator core does hold water actually, and the blower's got, it's in decent shape. I mean, there's rust in there and everything. But yeah, both of these were just completely crammed with debris, basically. So excited to get that vintage air system in here as well. I figured I might as well get it because I'm going to be wiring the entire truck from scratch, basically, minus the engine wiring harness that I already have in here. And yeah, so I wanted to have that so I know exactly what to wire up. Those are going to be definitely some things to cover in future videos. And time to wrap up the fabrication.